finishers and factions catching action.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to Finishers and Factions does NXT. This is NXT from the WWE Performance Center in Orlando, Florida. And I am Adam, joined as ever by my faithful co-host, Rich. Rich, how you doing?
I'm all good, mate. I'm all good. Ready to crack on with another fantastic episode after another fantastic episode's worth of wrestling from NXT.
Oh, 100%. It's important to note, this is actually the first NXT episode since Vengeance Day.
And if it was anything, if Vengeance Day was anything to go by, the finishing off of the storylines this week was going to be a phenomenal experience.
100%. I mean, we started NXT with a Vengeance Day recap, VT, and yeah, I mean, just we said it during the Vengeance Day episode, which you can always go back and have a listen to, that sort of Vengeance Day really sort of put the NXT in the main roster picture, especially for me, as me and Rich had only really started consuming regular NXT content on since the Netflix launch.
And I feel like I could possibly have been missing out on some of the best wrestling that WWE have been producing by not paying as much attention to NXT previously.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of our favourite stars at the minute came from NXT originally, as it was sort of originally thought of as like WWE's proving ground. It was their developmental scene, and now it seems to have evolved past that for me.
Yeah, to some point where we've had some episodes where I've walked away going, actually, that was better than our top tier product from Raw or from SmackDown. So yeah, no, it's definitely been really interesting to watch this build through, and I'm really glad we kind of stuck with it. You know, at one point we had a conversation about maybe NXT was a little bit too much on the workload and we weren't quite enjoying it as much. And yeah, I'm kind of glad we held off pulling the trigger on losing it, because I think it's probably one of the better programs right now.
Oh, and definitely.
I will give one example of why. It's because NXT does not piss around. When you get into an NXT, you know what you're getting straight into a match, or straight into something of some content form that's going to be needed. It's always something sort of like meaty to grip into.
And I mean, if we're going to talk about meaty in NXT, we may as well start off, as NXT did, with the NXT champion.
Oh, he's a big fella, really. I wouldn't want to walk into him in an alleyway pissed off.
Oh, 100%. And I mean, this guy was pissed off coming into the ring tonight.
Can you understand why, though? I mean, it's really easy to understand why. Not only did this guy have to face Grayson Waller and Austin Theory at Vengeance Day and deal with those two muppets, but he got his ass handed to him by those four guys, the four masked ascendants that have been running around causing havoc at Vengeance Day.
Yeah, and really easy to see. I mean, I'd have been pissed off being fucking jumped by four blokes when I haven't really done anything to fucking deserve it.
Not when you don't know who they are either. Like, these are four guys that, yes, we've got a couple of names, but we haven't really seen anything from any of them. And Adam said last week, if you Google one of them, Dion Lennox, it shows he's an American football player, not a professional wrestler. So it was quite difficult to do any research into who these guys were.
Yeah, and I mean, Obafemi comes out looking for a fight. He actually ends up inviting down this group to the ring, but we don't get this group in the ring at all.
No, and we definitely not something I thought that was going to happen. We've been seeing it a lot more recently. We actually got the TNA X Division champion Moose come down to the ring. So with the way the NXT and TNA have been working with their contract, we've been seeing a lot of different superstars from both both promotions working within the other promotions. We've seen it a lot with the NXT Tag Champions Fraxium. They've been defended at TNA events for their titles. We're going to see it at some point after this clash of words with Moose and Obafemi. This has been recorded a few days after it went live. So we've seen on social media as well since that we get to see the Hardy Boys are going to be competing in a TNA WWE crossover. We're not entirely sure how that's going to line up just yet, but it's been nice to kind of see for years where you weren't allowed to talk about the other promotions. Now they're actually getting involved with the other promotions. I don't think it will take a little bit longer for a WWE AEW crossover though. I don't think that'll be happening anytime soon.
That's if AEW ends up surviving. I think they're very much in sort of limp home mode at the moment.
They're struggling at the moment, unfortunately.
It's not looking good for them over there, which is a shame because they got off to a phenomenally strong start. But back to sort of NXT. I mean, I was actually it's really nice to see over since the talent exchange, the 5-year deal was announced a few weeks ago. We've seen a lot of NXT talent appear over on TNA, but not a lot of TNA talent appearing over on. It's been very one-sided so far, in my opinion. We've seen a few small names, like we saw.
We've had Fandango. We've had Santina Morella. We've now had Moose. So we're getting some names, but they've definitely had more out of the deal so far. But I think that's definitely going to end up changing. And what could be the odds that we could see a TNA title being defended at an NXT pay-per-view? That could be fun.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, even there's the potential for sort of cross promotion title losses as well. I mean, there's a potential for a WWE title to end up over around a TNA superstar's waist, and the opposite way around.
5 years of what could be a very, very positive impact on the change in professional wrestling. So I can't wait to see how the episodes are going a few years down the line when we're still talking about this deal they've got going.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I'm going to talk a little bit about the X division for TNA as well, because I know, Rich, you've never really sort of consumed any TNA content, whereas
not to the extent that you have.
A few years back, sort of back in the day when like AJ Styles was a big name, Christopher Daniels, Samoa Joe, Suicide, so many, like Abyss. There were so many other great wrestlers that were over in TNA back in the day, and even some WWE legends made some appearances over there, such as like Eric Bischoff, Hulk Hogan, Jeff Jarrett, who I think may actually still be over there. I'm not 100% sure where he's landed at the moment. He's either at
think
TNA
he's at AEW, I'm not going to lie.
Oh, right, okay, I wasn't 100% certain. Ric Flair ended up over in TNA as well. There's been a lot of big names that have come out of TNA as well as moving through TNA, and the X division was always like their cruiserweight division.
Yeah.
So the X division champion was the cruiserweight champion of TNA essentially, and yeah, to see that championship round the waist of somebody like Moose. I mean, I've not seen any of Moose competing. I've heard the name, and I know that he's been a big star over at TNA. He was a massive grab for them when he was a free agent, and they've really done the mileage with him. But I don't know an awful lot about the way he wrestles. And as Rich alluded to, we are due to see Moose and Obafemi soon. I'm not 100% sure when. I believe it may be next week. I'm not.
And nothing's really been announced about that one that I remember. It just said we were going to see them soon, but it might get a bit further down through our notes and find out that it was confirmed, and we'll let you know as we get further down.
Yeah, this is it. But
Now, if I
Yeah.
was there a VT or a promo between this and our first match, or did it go straight into the first match?
So I think we got initial entrances from one of the pair that comes out here, but then we ended up with a GM office promo that actually took place before the match began, and this office promo saw Ava and Eddie Thorpe discussing Eddie Thorpe's win over Trick Williams in the strap match at Vengeance Day.
What match that was?
Actually, one of my favourite matches of the night. Not going to lie, but we see a pair we haven't seen a lot of on NXT, but we sort of know them to be synonymous with what looks to be an attempted revival of Chase U. This is Kale Dixon and Uriah Connors coming in to basically invite them to some kind of post-show after party of some kind. It's a bit of an odd setup, but again, I think these guys are sort of emulating American college students, maybe.
Yeah, no. It was the Chase U thing. We didn't really experience much of that. It wasn't part of something we've watched, so it's a little bit difficult trying to pick up on that previous storyline. But it'd be interesting to see how and what they do with Andre Chase now he's not Chase University.
Well, I think that's what we're seeing. I think that's what we're seeing an evolution of here, because we see sort of Dixon and Connors end up signing Andre Chase up to a match without him even being present to say, "Yeah, I'll do it." And this is a match versus Eddie Thorpe, which it's.
I've not seen Andre Chase wrestle yet since we've been doing finishes and factions, I believe. So it'll be interesting to see what his style of wrestling is compared to Eddie Thorpe if Ava allows that a match to go ahead. I believe she does as well, doesn't she?
Yeah,
That's
so
a
we
little bit later
definitely
on
see
in the
that
card.
definitely see that match later on in the card. But we, if we we'll move away from that.
Back to our
that
first
promo.
match, which is the first match of the evening was the number one contenders match for the women's North American title, and it was a triple threat match this week between Kalani Jordan, Carmen Petrovic, and Jada Parker. That is correct, isn't it, Jada Parker? I haven't messed that one up.
It certainly is.
Right,
It
brilliant.
certainly is.
I wanted to make sure I messed that one up because the entire time I was watching this match, I thought I was getting a name wrong.
No, definitely not. Definitely not. Now, I don't remember us having quite as much to say about sort of Carmen Petrovic or Jada Parker, but we've sort of been in quite a bit of agreement around Kalani Jordan up to this point, although she is starting to show a bit more of an edgy side to her. But she's come across as quite sort of, I don't want to say boring because that feels disrespectful. It's a case of
She hasn't
she's
been
come through-
showcased the way that she possibly could be. She's been underutilized, I think, in ring, and that's not really helping her ability to hold her part in the storyline. Where with Carmen and Jada, they're both quite big, aggressive women that have kind of been let more. It feels like they've had more creative control over what they're doing to be able to make their matches a little bit more interesting, rather than Kalani's not been given that opportunity.
Yeah, Kalani Jordan's sort of come across as quite generic up to this point. And yeah, just not overtly like she's done nothing to capture my attention other than appear on screen.
Yeah, where most of
Matches and-
the start of this match was all really sort of Carmen Petrovic. Sorry, she was the quicker one of the three out of the gate, and then it went into sort of Jada Parker's turn to be quite assertive and dominant. But again, you didn't really see much in that opening exchange from Kalani Jordan until later on, where I don't know if it felt this way for you, but it felt like it had turned into a singles match between Kalani Jordan and Jada Parker. Because obviously after Carmen Petrovic got wiped out and rolled out, she was outside for quite a while.
Yeah, and we see this quite a lot in WWE specifically. Their triple threat matches is that one person will be sort of rolled out of the, will end up disappearing for a good chunk of the match, and it's normally after sort of like a big heavy attack on them. And I mean, out of the three that are in the match, sort of Carmen Petrovic is the smallest competitor in the match. She doesn't have a lot of height on her, and she is only a very slight girl. I mean, don't get me wrong, she's built solid, but still only very slight. But
she was the more aggressive out of the three at the start, which was, really nice. And she managed to hold that through as well, even with the other two guys managing to get some momentum when they were on a little session between the two of them as well.
Yeah, and it's a case that obviously Carmen Petrovic has been involved in a romance with a superstar we haven't actually seen in ring since the Netflix debut, Ashante Adonis, and he seems to sort of follow her around. He's out at ringside with her matches, and this is no different. And Ashante actually ends up pulling Petrovic from the ring just to sort of get her out of some kind of danger, but.
I believe one of them was about to try a top rope maneuver onto her while she was lying underneath the turnbuckle. So, yeah, he kind of pulled her out of the way to stop her from taking some more damage. Which, in theory, if Adonis Ashanti wasn't there, this match would have been completely different, I think.
Oh, 100%. I mean, this match ends up ending with Petrovic stealing a win. I'm not going to call it stealing. It was
a tactically enhanced win.
That's a very PC way of putting it. I like that. Tactically enhanced way of winning. And yeah, it's a case that, I mean, it looked like Jada Parker had this in the bag. And again, it's Ashante Adonis in the right place at the right time. He pulled her from the match at the right time and then put her back in as Jada Parker basically was showing off.
Yeah, and she got hit with a sling blade and then an attempted Fujiwara armbar as well, which, the sling blade's enough to take you off your feet, but being dumped into an armbar afterwards, that's never pleasant.
No, definitely not. But yeah, as we said, Petrovic seems to be put back in the ring, sneaks the win, and ends up the number one contender for the Women's North American Championship, which, as I think we can all agree, Jada Parker was never going to take very well. As I said, she had this more or less wrapped up in the bag.
Yeah, and it was, you knew that she was going to lose her shit. I think I would too. So attacking Carmen after the bell and kind of, well, they all ended up basically brawling again, to be fair, didn't they?
Well, it started with Jada attacking Petrovic, and then
Kalani Jordan intervened as well.
Parker ends up getting taken out by Jordan, and Parker and Jordan just end up they've had a little bit of contention between them building for a few weeks, and I think it just boiled over with them at the moment. So
might get a singles match between them next week just to try and see if they can fuel a bit more fire for this, because it's got quite an interesting sort of way to it.
Yeah, but speaking of next week, we know that Petrovic does not have long to wait for her opportunity at the North American Championship, as she will be contending for that title next week.
Well, yeah. So you also had Fatal Influence storm the ring as well during the commercial break.
Yeah,
ambushing Petrovic as well. So she's really not having a good night. Well, she is, because she's picked up the win, but she's taken a beating already, and now she's about to get another one.
This was sort of we spoke about this, I think, on the off podcast as it goes, because the way that it's displayed on screen is that we see Jordan Grace walking back, sort of literally just walking through backstage, showing the fact that she's there. Then all of a sudden, it's like an emergency cut back to the ring, where, as you said, Fatal Influence are well and truly sort of laying into Petrovic, and Ashante Adonis is stood there like a, but yeah, like a chocolate teapot. Essentially, the guy's completely useless.
I mean, he was anyway. He didn't need to be out at ringside to prove that.
Yeah. Then the thing that really took me out of this little part was there was a really big continuity black hole.
So
around the
I've
second
seen
part.
a little video clip of on social media about what happened during the blackout that we kind of had. So basically, JC Jane strikes Adonis with a chair, and then you get Stephanie Vaquer, Julia, and Jordan Grace all come running out to try and save Carmen Petrovic for whatever reason. And then obviously you had, when we came back from the commercial break, that's where we had Jordan Grace, Julia, and Stephanie Vaquer appear from. I know we both kind of said, oh, wait a minute, we left it with these 4 people, and then we come out and there's these people. And
Yeah,
then
so
obviously that sets up what is looking at being a 6-woman tag match with those 3 and Fatal Influence.
Yeah, so the way it was displayed to us at home through Netflix was that we went, it seeming to cut out to a short break. We come back and sort of Fatal Influence have gained an extra 2 victims and lost Ashante Adonis and Carmen Petrovic. So their 2 new victims are Stephanie Vaquer and Julia. And then we see Jordan Grace come out and just completely level the playing field. And I mean, we've again spoken about Grace on the off podcast, and she is one impressive lady. I'm not going to lie. She's just
TNA were stupid for letting this woman go, and we got to see a little bit later on what she can do. And Jesus, man, like, she's going to destroy some of these women in the NXT Women's Division.
Yeah, and it sort of didn't make sense in any way, shape, or form for TNA to let her contract expire or whatever it is that happened, because either way, she's going to end up back on She could end up back on TNA programming anyway, because of the deal between NXT and TNA. That boggled my mind to move from one to the other to still appear on both regardless.
I mean, that's a big fuck you. If something went wrong at TNA with Jordan Grace and she's gone to NXT, signed with them, goes back to TNA, and basically it could be a massive fuck you to TNA.
Yeah, this is it. It's just, just a bit. It just seemed a bit odd considering the timing. I don't know how long that had been in the works, but
yeah, it did. It was a little bit strange.
We'll move on anyway, because I know during the main event later on we have plenty of time to talk about.
We move into a backstage promo, I believe, with Stacks, do we not?
Yeah, so Stacks sort of preparing for his match. We hear that he's sort of Tony D'Angelo has not been seen since before Vengeance Day, where he was brutally assaulted in the conclusion to a cage match.
Yeah, no, he got destroyed there. So obviously, without the leader of the family being around to point them in the right direction, Stacks decides, I'm the big man now. I'm going to go out there, step up, do what I've got to do while Tony's busy healing up or whatever it is. We haven't actually seen anything from Tony D'Angelo to be able to even kind of hint as to where we think that one's going. But then I was really disappointed by the way they finished this, because they were building it up. He's like, I've got a match, I've got to do this. Oh, I'm going to go and wrap my hands. Come on, let's go. Oh, is that it?
Yeah, very sort of anticlimactic. It didn't flow quite the way I expected it to.
No, it didn't. It didn't at all. Which was something I'm getting used to with NXT's like promos. They'll have a promo to promo a promo, and then, but it just doesn't either fit into the timing of where it's being put into, or it just doesn't seem to give you everything you feel that you need. Not sure if they're using that to make sure that you watch to the next promo of the promo, but yeah, it's a bit annoying sometimes.
Yeah, very much so. So I'm not 100% sure what to.
We'll get there with it. We'll get there with it. One thing I do know what to make of was the second match when we get around to that. This I think was. I'm already putting stakes to claims that this was my match of the night for NXT, this second match.
So this was the women's tag match between the Meta Girls, Jakara Jackson and Lash Legend.
And Sol Ruka and Zarya.
Yeah.
Two amazing wrestlers. I'm very much a fan of Sol Ruka and Zarya at the moment.
Yeah, do you know what? I can't dispute that. I didn't get a massive amount of notes for this match, and I'm going to be honest, because it's a few days since we've done anything. I've watched this and gone to that extent. I'm a little bit unsure as to whether the reason why I don't have a lot of notes is because I was lost in the match, or is it because there wasn't a lot to comment on? I'm not 100% certain where I am with that one. So,
all right, so I got a reasonable amount of notes for this one. I quite enjoyed this one. So you started off with Sol Ruka and Lash Legend kind of locking up, testing each other's strength. You get to see a lot of Lash Legend's power advantage initially when the way she's pushing Sol Ruka around. There was an early tag involved for the metaphor, and they end up using it to double team Ruka, slamming her into the mat. We then get a sort of counter from Ruka. There was quite a nice little elbow involved there, and then there was the tag in for Zarya to jump in. Now she's a really high energy wrestler, which I really like with it. There was a few decent sort of like high risk move attempts. There was one that Sol Ruka attempted. I can't remember what the move's called off the top of my head. It's kind of like her version, I suppose, like a Twist of Fate style swanton. But she got caught and ended up being tossed into a swinging torture rack. There was a lot of counters in this for a lot of the time between Sol Ruka and Lash Legend. It was quite nice to see the aerial agility and the technical style going against each other and still being quite flowy.
Yeah, definitely. And as I said, I remember enjoying the match.
Yeah, I think
didn't get a lot written down for it.
One of the biggest things that kind of happened, I think you can't get away with without mentioning, was the simultaneous double pump kick, dropping each other. To be fair, towards the end of the match, these guys, they looked like they'd started to flag a bit, but I think it flowed quite well. To be fair, and it was nice to see that Zarya and Sol Ruka managed to get another win and kind of push them a little bit further into that tag division. But yeah, no, I've got it written down here. So Sol Ruka's signature move is called the Soul Snatcher, and it is a really nice move. It is, yeah. Some of these NXT guys have got some beautiful finishes and signature moves, and it's nice to watch them. Kind of the way they flow and the way they land and the way the other superstars sell them as well, I think definitely helps. But yeah, some of these moves are beautiful to watch.
Yeah, definitely. And you've sort of covered anything that I had for this match. It was literally the section for this match. Whenever I do my notes, the match part is obviously always going to be bigger than any of the promos, but you could honestly mistake this for a freaking promo at this point. Really good match. Really enjoyed it. Remember really enjoying it. Just not a massive amount for it, but
Yeah. One of us always
yeah,
picks up the
so-
slack somewhere, right? You've got information
Oh,
that I don't
100
written down. So it always helps.
100%.
Always helps. Which we go from that into the really sort of fun conclusion that we are definitely getting this 6-woman tag match confirmed as our main event. With so we're going to end up with Fallon Henley, JC Jane, and Jasmine Nix versus Stephanie Vicker, Jordan Grace, and Julia.
Yeah, which we know is going to be. I mean, just with the 5 superstars that we know from NXT, the 2 champions, as well as Fatal
Influence.
Influence. I keep wanting to say Fatal Attraction. My issue, but yeah, with Fatal Influence as well. 5 incredibly talented women and 1 complete wild card. We know that she made a massive impact in TNA. We've just got to wait and find out how that looks for when she's here. So we move on from there to a backstage promo where we see Sarah Schreiber interviewing Wes Lee,
Tyreek
Woodway, and Tyson DuPont.
Yeah. I didn't really get much out of their conversation apart from them just kind of telling Sarah Schreiber how unpredictable NXT is. It just seemed like a space filler until we got to see Ricky Starks come out and sign his contract.
Yeah, so very much a case, I think they were trying to use the fact that because Wes Lee specifically has been in NXT for a horrendously long time.
Yeah.
Like possibly he may even still be one of the original NXT stars that have just been there forever, and they sort of relied on that to be able to say, oh well, been a lot of change in NXT recently. You've seen a lot of change. Does any of it shock you? It was. I think it was pointing towards a genuine sort of journalistic approach to how they wanted to get that done. And then in the end, as you say, we saw Ricky Starks enter, and Wes Lee was dropped like a
like a bad habit.
Oh, 100%. We've seen people dropped in the ring that looked better after Sarah Schreiber had dropped Wes Lee this week. But yeah. And in fairness, we see in the background while Sarah Schreiber is talking about, is interviewing Ricky about his contract signing later on. You can even see Wes Lee in the back. He's getting hot over it. There's some definite heat building there.
Yeah, whether they're gonna waste the debut of one of the professional wrestling's hottest free agents and someone like Wes Lee, I hope not.
Well,
there's so many other superstars that are available that could make it into a better match.
Yeah, we don't have to wait very long, thankfully, as we cut from backstage to in ring, and we see Ava and Ricky Starks coming out to the ring to sign Starks' NXT contract.
Yeah, well, Starks' entry music. Did you hear any of the lyrics they've used for that?
I'm going to be honest, I probably did, but again, it's been a few days since I've actually watched.
I made a note of this. So Ricky Stark's entry music is very rappy, and the one line that seems to be repeated quite a lot is $1 million and I still won't remember you. Didn't think too much of it, but I'm not sure how they're going to push his character. Obviously, we've seen a few bits with nothing huge, but it kind of gives off a bit of a heel sort of feel to it. So it'd be interesting to see if that's the way they push it.
Potentially. I've got to admit, I reckon they'll probably push him more towards face than heel, just to sort of establish him in NXT. And I think that sort of becomes more evident throughout the episode, if I'm honest. But yeah, it's a case that, I mean, Ricky's certainly got high hopes for himself. He's not lacking in confidence, bless him. But another person that isn't lacking in confidence is All Ego Ethan Page.
And I don't think this event could have gone down as well as it did without Ethan Page coming out to it. He just adds something to a promo. He's very, very good with the microphone and the way he's built his character, and the All Ego thing, along with, you know, how egotistical we're starting to feel that Ricky Starks is as well. That could be a hell of a match.
Yeah, and I think the verbal sparring match that these two get into, I mean, Starks ends up calling Ethan Page insecure, which isn't a big leap, but it obviously it obviously hit him like a ton of bricks to be called insecure at this point.
Yeah, he weren't happy about that, was he?
No, and Stark's actually making some predictions. Obviously, All Ego Ethan Page at Vengeance Day faced off against Javon Evans, who they've had a horrendous rivalry recently. Yeah,
I'll tell you something though, it's been one of the most intense storylines that NXT have had. That Ethan 100%. Page Javon Evans rivalry has been absolutely incredible.
Yeah, and it's a case that it's one of the more intense rivalries I think that WWE have had. We'll take it much further than NXT. Is that it's probably one of the most intense storylines that WWE have had in a long time. I struggle to think of anything sort of more visceral than what they came out with. And yeah, what a match at Vengeance Day as well. It did not end the way I anticipated it would, but and this is where sort of Ricky Stark is telling him, do you know what? People like Javon Evans, they always come back, and it's a case that as if he'd seen him in the crowd or something.
Javon Evans was there.
In there. Yeah, he jumps and beats Ethan Page up through the crowd and is escorted out that way.
Yeah, it was a very quick glimpse of Javon Evans, but it was definitely a positive one. He was definitely letting Ethan Page know that ain't done. And I believe if they build it correctly and have the correct amount of time between matches and promos and stuff, I think they could push that through to Mania. And for NXT's Mania Week pay-per-view, that could be one of the matches on the card.
Stand and Deliver.
That's the one. I was thinking Adam and the Ants, but I couldn't work out why the reference.
But still, Ricky Starks can't seem to catch a break with this contract signing. You just can't seem to put pen to paper. As
Wesley comes out now, doesn't he?
Yeah, well, we saw obviously promo beforehand. It's a case that he was getting hot over the fact that he'd just been completely ignored, and he came out basically to give him a piece of his mind.
A piece of his mind he pretty much did. And up until he decided to try and give him a piece of his fist, and that cheap shot did not work out well for him, as Ricky Starks just throws him out the ring and walks over to the table to sign his contract. And as he does that, throws it back onto the table, and the camera pans in, and we find out that Ricky Starks is not going to be known as Ricky Starks in NXT. He's now going to be known as Ricky Saints, which is a big change that we weren't really expecting. I suppose we did have a conversation a few weeks ago when he showed up randomly as they were building the cage match for the Tony D'Angelo match. That we were unsure how they were going to work his character, and they've slowly started to put into pieces.
Yeah, so they're we tend to find this a lot, especially with big name stars, is that they'll have made their name under a slightly different name in another promotion. They'll come into somewhere else and they'll be repackaged slightly. Not a lot, but
enough to stop any legal issues.
Yeah, and that's what I think we've seen here. We also find out from this promo that Wesley is demanding Ricky Saints, sorry, first match.
Yeah,
And that
which
will happen next week.
it will. We then go backstage for a. Well, I got a little bit confused about this one. So, Fraxium, we were backstage with Fraxium talking about the masked assailants that give them an ass whooping. Is it the masked assailants that give them an ass whooping at Vengeance Day?
Yes, they did.
Yes.
They made 2 appearances at Vengeance Day. One during the NXT, the end of the NXT Heavyweight Championship match,
And one during the tag
and
match between
yeah.
Fraxium and Josh Briggs and Inamura. Yoshi Inamura?
Yoshiki Inamura.
Almost got it. Almost. Doing well considering I didn't have that in my notes.
Exactly. But yeah, it's a case that they were attacked after their match at Vengeance Day, and this is where I think we see a lot of the differences between the members of Fraxium. Is that Nathan Fraser seems to be the hot-headed one, is the impression I'm getting, because he's getting like really agitated, really aggravated over the fact that he was attacked, whereas you've got Axiom is just very sort of cool, calm and collected, and just says, do you know what, well, they'll get theirs. It's a case that we've just got to keep our head on straight. And yeah,
We then
you
get to
tend to find
see
that they balance each other out.
they do balance each other out quite nicely. But talking about things that don't balance out very well, they brought No Quarter Catch Crew, that's a mouthful, into the equation with this one as well. Basically just sort of saying, congrats on retaining last week, but they should face, there were No Quarter Catch Crew were looking to face a real tag team, which looked like they were trying to set up a match between No Quarter Catch Crew and Fraxium. But that wasn't how it went at all. It actually caught me by surprise when they called out the Hardy Boys from TNA.
I mean, you can't get any more of a real tag team than that, really, let's face it.
I don't even think we've got the time to research the accolades those boys have held over every wrestling promotion they've been through. They've done TNA, they've been in AEW, they've been at WWE. They're probably one of the most decorated WWE tag teams in history. Definitely top 3.
100%.
And that's only off the top of the head. I'm throwing in like New Day there, and possibly I want to say the Usos as well, because they've done a fair few recently. I'm not sure if they are the actual top 3. I'd have to research that, but they're definitely up there. As I said, they were at AEW, TNA, they've done WWE, they've done the independent circuit, they've held titles where titles didn't even exist before the Hardy Boys showed up. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting one for No Quarter Catch Crew. I think they're going to get absolutely destroyed by the Hardy Boys, but it will be nice to see the Hardy Boys back on a WWE programming, especially with Jeff being completely sober these days, which is something I didn't think I'd ever see. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, this is it. It's
I think
I've read
this is
since
Jeff's
this episode
start of looking for redemption with WWE, I think.
Yeah, I've read this week past that Matt Hardy gave an interview about Jeff and how and all this to do with coming over to NXT, having a match in NXT. Jeff is very much looking for a way to get back into WWE. He's very much thinking about his legacy that he's leaving behind and all of that good stuff, because he's getting on a bit now, is Jeff. He's obviously had a tough go round of it, as well as
apart from his addiction issues, like he's put his body through more tables, ladders and chairs than any other guy in professional wrestling, I'm willing to bet. And that's taken the Dudleys into consideration as well, and we know how many tables they like to destroy.
Yeah, this is it's a case that there's definitely definitely a lot can be said for these tag team for like this tag team alone in what they've done. I mean, they survived some of the most brutal match types I think have ever been devised by a booker, if I'm completely honest. But
Yeah, they've done some damage over the years, but we could do an entire podcast episode on what the Hardy Boys have accomplished. And we probably will at some point down the line start doing sort of some special content on some extra bits about different sort of parts of professional wrestling. But we're not going to digress too far into that or into the Hardy Boys' accomplishments, because we've got another sort of another match to talk about.
yeah, so this was the third match on the card. It was a men's singles match, and this was the family versus family match that we were sort of alluding to last week, as well as the promo with Stax earlier on, because this saw Stax of the D'Angelo family versus Sean Spears. Now, Stax came out with the remaining members of the D'Angelo family, Adriana Rizzo, and I put down here Luca Crucifino, but I'm not 100% sure that's correct.
That's what I've got, because I've also got that Sean Spears came down with Izzy Dame, Brooks Jensen, and Nico Vance.
Yeah, so I was unsure about Luca Crucifino only because never heard the guy speak. I've never heard him referenced or seen him referenced in NXT programming since since NXT came to Netflix. He's only ever been referred to as part of the D'Angelo family. He has never, as far as I can find, been referenced as an individual, only ever as part of the group.
Yeah, so I didn't get a huge amount for this match, and I think that is purely because this match didn't feel like it was very relevant for some parts of it. So I have got in my notes that Vic Joseph on commentary was emphasising quite a lot that it was Stack's mission to honour the Don, and Rizzo, which was basically he was using that as an opportunity to push the story a bit further, and Stax came out swinging pretty much from the start, but you can tell that he was pissed off by how it was going, more than he wasn't really thinking. He was fighting with his heart, not his head, and he got leveled to start off with. And you see a lot of Sean Spears kind of take control of this match, which was something, I'm not going to lie to you, I expected Sean Spears to do really well with this. I like watching him wrestle, to be fair. We don't see a huge amount of it, but what you do see is normally a good match to watch.
Yeah, and they also made a big deal about the fact that they were putting out extra security at ringside, because obviously these guys bought out their own little private armies.
Yeah, pretty much. If this goes off, it's going off like well, yeah, I'm not going to make a comparison, but we know it's going bang, and it's going bang fast.
Yeah, 100%. Now, the odd thing is about this is that it didn't go bang.
Very, because you expected it to, and it was kind of leading up to go bang, and you generally thought it was going to go off, but it didn't happen. Which it's got to happen at some point, surely. They've got to let him go hell for leather.
Oh, and they will. It will happen, regardless of what anybody thinks, says, or does. It will happen where they will go completely hell for leather at one another, and I don't think we'll see it properly until maybe Tony D'Angelo returns at some point.
Well, whenever that may be, because we've not even had a hint at Tony D'Angelo making a return yet.
No, he's obviously taking some well-needed time off for now, and you
blame
know
him
what?
after
More
that
power
cage
to
match.
him. No, it was a brutal beatdown at the end of that cage match. He's not going to be able to stay away for too long, being a title holder, but we'll see him return at some stage soon, I'm sure. Now, Yeah, I didn't get a lot of notes for the Sean Spears Stacks match either. I got a few spots.
Did you get the one of Sean Spears crotching Stacks on the ropes? I am a 34-year-old man this year, and I'll tell you something, nothing is funnier to me in a professional wrestling match than some guy getting hit in the giblets. It does not matter how it is done. Someone taking something to the nuts in a professional wrestling match is enough to make me laugh. It could be the biggest heel in the world hitting the face, like the biggest face in the world, in the nuts, and I'd still crease.
Yeah, fair enough. I didn't get that one actually, or at least I don't think so. I didn't write it down that way. But yeah, I mean,
it wasn't a low blow as such. He just, popped him onto the rope, but he didn't have anything in between. He went straight down on himself. It was definitely not pleasant. Those ropes have no give either.
No, they really don't. But Spears walked out victorious after a C4 body drop and won via pinfall, really. So I think that's possibly why it felt a bit anticlimactic, is that Sean Spears ended up walking out with the win.
And it was a clean win as well. It wasn't a dirty one, which is something we're not really used to seeing outside of these fights. It's normally an interference or a disqualification in these bigger matches at the moment. So to get a clean win in the middle was quite strange.
Yeah, and this was what surprised me about this match, is that there were so many individuals on the outside of the ring, and we only really got one possible hint at maybe there being something going on the outside.
Was that when Izzy Dane climbed up on the apron to distract the ref and Brooks Jensen tripped up Stacks, giving Sean Spears a chance to recover a little bit?
So I got it down as there was an instance on the outside of the ring where we saw sort of Rizzo starting to get into it with Izzy Dane, but yeah, it was a bit of an odd match. It didn't seem to quite fit the bill. I feel like there should have been more to it, but I'm not sure how I would have
added
written
to
that
it.
matchup any different.
You know what? I was in the same place, to be fair. I couldn't think of what it needed to make it either more of a match or just finish off what I think they were trying to tell us.
Yeah, very much so. But we'll move on from that match, because I think that's just going to make it. We could sit here and posture over it for ages, and I just don't think it's going to make any more sense than it already does.
Talking about things that don't make sense is where we go into next. We see Lexis King sitting backstage with his trophy. I can't remember for the life of me what it's called at the moment. The Heritage Cup, sorry.
Yeah.
And you see him kind of talking to Moose about how he beat the gentleman who, formerly known as Fandango, who's currently running around TNA under the name of help me out here, Adam.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of it myself, if I'm completely honest with you. It's a case I'm now having to go back through my...
I want to say it's like JC or something, but it is mentioned. Yeah, that's the one. Basically just saying that, Moose has got his balls hanging low to come over to NXT and challenge over Femi, and Moose basically says, well, sometimes all you've got to do to get a title shot is ask. At which point we see the setup for what is going to be Lexis King versus Moose next week in Cincinnati, which is Lexis King's hometown. So yeah, he's the first person we see from NXT getting a pop at the TNA X Division title next week.
Which sort of makes sense based on what I said earlier on. As I said, it's a very alternative title. It's the cruiserweight title of TNA generally, so it makes sense that from at least outward appearances that Lexis King would go for something like that, as his style would very much suit the X Division to a degree. But we'll see how that pans out for for him and Moose. I don't think I don't really see it going anywhere. I will be completely honest. As we mentioned earlier on, we know that Obafemi has made appearances over at TNA, distracting Moose during a match over on his home promotion. It's not outside the realms of possibility to expect Moose to return the favour next week during this match.
No,
Just calling it.
Yeah, we're gonna have to get some more calls in there because after I called that unsanctioned match between Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn at Elimination Chamber, I feel like I'm on top here, lads.
Well, some of my calls haven't panned out just yet, but there are some big calls in there.
Definitely, and I think we see the start of that big one panning out in the next couple of weeks, and with the with Elimination Chamber being only 10 days away.
Exactly. But we go from here, and still within the same promo, we do sort of a pan away, and we find Kale Dixon and Uriah Connors basically having their asses handed to them verbally by Andre Chase for speaking for him.
I say they set him up for a match with Eddie Thorpe. The poor guy wasn't even there to say, "Actually, boys, fuck off. I'm not interested." He's basically gone off to tug his shit in his locker room for a half hour and then been roped into something else.
Well, what we haven't seen a lot of Andre Chase since the Netflix era began. We certainly haven't seen him in any in-ring competition. But what we have seen of him is he's been walking around as a man defeated. He's lost any sort of spark and fire that he had within himself, or probably had within himself when he was heading up Chase U, I'm not sure what to make of Andre Chase at this point, because I think we've come in a little bit later in his character development, and it's a bit difficult to have sympathy for a man when we don't really know what he lost and what he's gone on to do. So
what we know he is going on to do is have this match with Eddie Thorpe. And yeah, I'm not going to lie to you, I wouldn't want to be Andre Chase at the moment. Eddie Thorpe's on a rampage.
Well, he's on a roll after his victory at Vengeance Day, and while this isn't Eddie Thorpe's strap match that he likes to get himself involved in, he's still not anybody to be messed with, sort of thing. But again, we see Andre Chase come out for the match, and he's got no presence whatsoever. There's no enthusiasm. There's no spark there. I mean, even with somebody that's going out there who knows they're going to lose the match, it's a case that they still come out and make a show of it. But
he basically just looked like someone had beaten him up backstage, taken his lunch money and told him to piss off and smell what was in the canteen. Like, he really did not look happy about having to go out there and do this, and it kind of looked... We get the fact that he's got a bit of a depressive thing going on. We've got used to seeing wrestlers in a bit of a depressive at the moment. I mean, Drew McIntyre is currently doing the same sort of thing. But yeah, there was nothing to him, no sort of like no swagger, no stroll. It's kind of his entrance was the least memorable thing of NXT this week.
Yeah, very much so, and I think that may be how they've tried to write it in. But I mean, Chase's last televised match was back on the 19th of December. So we're talking just before Christmas. He's now at this stage we're on the 18th of February.
That's a fair gap of time. That is good. 10 weeks.
All we've seen of him so far is a man that's very much been walking around under a dark cloud.
Yeah, and that's pretty much just going to continue. To be fair, I mean, Eddie Thorpe's going to give him a good going over, and a good going over is pretty much what he gets, to be fair. There is at one point, Vic Joseph turns around and kind of highlights that, the professor's still got a bit of fight in him, but yeah, it didn't last for too much longer, to be fair. We did see an attempt.
I think commentary spent more time laughing at Chase's ring gear, to be quite honest.
I mean, he went out in an old shirt like a turtleneck, a pair of what looked like tracky bottoms, and a pair of thrift store trainers. But I'm not entirely sure if that's part of the character they're trying to portray with him being down on his luck and he's, suffering a little bit like they did with Baron Corbin when they were messing around with him.
Well, it just looked like they got him to raid the lost property box before going out. It just, yeah,
it was a bit of a laughing sort of thing. Obviously, if you're in a position where you can't afford clothing, then we're not laughing at you for that. We've both experienced financial hardships of ourselves, but this guy seemed to be kind of using it as a jab, I suppose. I don't know.
Yeah, and we also see, despite the fact that in the promo beforehand, Andre Chase very much saying that he just wants to go out, get this match over and done with, wants to do it on his own, which but I don't think anybody can particularly blame him for. But we do see
the two lads come back out, don't they? I can't remember their names.
Uriah Connors and Cale Dixon.
That's the one. Yeah, we haven't seen a lot from them either, and it kind of feels with them that they're just kind of they're trying to throw them on Chase just to try and see if he can get a little bit of something going. But I don't think there's a lot of space really in the tag division for another stable to be trying to push through, if you get me.
Yeah, it's a bit of an odd one. I'm not sure what to make of it myself either. But
this was definitely a squash match.
It felt very squashy. It could have definitely been done slightly differently, I feel. But maybe that's how they wanted to go about it. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, we ended up with Eddie Thorpe delivering a flatliner to Chase, bouncing him face first off the canvas for a 3 count. And then I think the most interesting part about this match actually happened after the final bell rang. Obviously, you've got Andre Chase lying on the floor. Eddie Thorpe's over the top of him, posing, celebrating, doing the Healy stuff that Eddie Thorpe does. And then all of a sudden you lose all the lighting and Trick Williams appears, not in person, but on the Titron, cutting a little promo basically saying, you think this thing between me and you is over, and it's not over till I say it's over, and if I'm going down, I'm taking you with me. And then, so it looks more like this was just a filler match to keep Eddie Thorpe sort of fresh for whatever they've got written into the build-up with him and Trick Williams again from next week. And then you go backstage, a little while later to file Cale Dixon and Uriah Connors approaching Andre Chase, only for him basically to brush him off and kind of add to his humiliation, I suppose.
Yeah, he was put in a match that he didn't agree to in any way, shape, or form, and then basically goes out, gets his ass handed to him, which I would make a small sort of point to say that probably did it to himself. To a certain degree, I think if he'd have put more effort in, he'd have probably seen a little bit more of a result out of it. But
I don't think there was much of a result he was getting from an Eddie Thorpe that is on an absolute rampage.
No, but he could have at least put up a bit more of a fight and made it more of a fight rather than just this complete squash match that we ended up with.
Yeah, well, one thing we know we're not going to get from in a form of a squash match is the result of the next section So we go backstage now and see Ethan Page and Ricky Saints with Wesley and Ava, and they're basically kind of just getting into it about the whole who's getting the first shot at Ricky Saints, and now he's signed his contract, and we get sort of Javon Evans coming in to try and get at Ethan Page again. They're definitely not finished. With Ava basically finishing it by saying, "Look, we're gonna have a tag match to settle this. We're gonna have Ricky Saints and Javon Evans versus Ethan Page and Wes Lee next week on NXT," which I think is going to be a fucking incredible match. And it keeps everyone happy. Obviously, Wes Lee wanted first shouts. Ricky Saints it's his debut, so it's going to be a big match anyway. You add in the beef between Ethan Page and Javon Evans to go with that. You've got what on paper is an absolute firecracker of a match. And hopefully they're allowed the creative ability to turn that into main event material. And I think main event is where that match is going to end up on next week's NXT.
Yeah, definitely. Before we get there, though, a few more bits of business to cover, because we've got
another promo.
VT from the Hardy Boys themselves.
Yeah, this is a response to No Quarter Catch Crew calling them out earlier on in the episode, and already thinking about just kind of, well, let's put it this way, I can't wait to watch next week's NXT just to hear that entry music for the Hardy Boys now. Something like that was enough to, I mean, I was going to watch it anyway because we've got to do a podcast episode on it, but I'm really hankering at the bit now to watch NXT, so when that goes live, I'm really going to enjoy kicking into that. My notes for that match are going to be phenomenal.
Well, all's hoping. As long as they make enough sense for you, then that's all we can ever really ask.
Yeah, so we find out about that match, and we find out that they're going to tell Fraxium to take a front row seat and watch what is going to be a real tag match. So it could be interesting to see if they end up pulling that into a three-way tag match at some point between Jeff Hardy, with the Hardy Boys, No Quarter Catch Crew, and Fraxium.
Yeah, very much so. But before we get any further with moving on for next week's NXT, let's finish off this week's where we've got main event of the evening, the 6-woman tag team match, which sees Stephanie Vaquer, Julia and Jordan Grace versus the 3 ladies of Fatal Influence, Fallon Henley, JC Jane and Jasmine Nix.
Yeah, and I must admit, I've been looking forward to this particular match all night, just to see what Jordan Grace can bring to the women's division. But you've got 6 of the big powerhouses in the women's division in the same ring at the same time. So you know they're not going to bring a star like Jordan Grace in and not utilize her. Well, you bloody hope they don't. In fairness,
I don't think we were disappointed. We could have been disappointed by what the match we got, because,
I mean, we had a chaotic, thrilling match all the way through, even from just the squaring off at the start, with Julia and JC Jane. Like, you knew that whatever combination of superstars you got in the ring at that time, you were going to get some incredible athleticism, technical wrestling with some high-risk maneuvers, and it's going to be completely flawless, even considering, a lot of these women have probably been working on this for a while. They knew it was coming, we didn't. See, they've been training for this. I'd love to see what they would, some of the conversations they've had about how this match was going to go down, because I was not disappointed in the match.
No, definitely not. I mean, we saw 100% the raw power of Jordan Grace. Those muscles that are on that woman are not just for show.
Those muscles have muscles.
Oh, 100%. And do you know what? I've made this comparison to you earlier in the week. And or I made this comment to you earlier in the week, and it sort of explains the one bit that they said at the very beginning of this match when Jordynne Grace made her entrance. Because they said that Triple H was excited, actually really excited to see what Jordynne Grace brought to the table for it. Now, I made a comment to you that doesn't Jordynne Grace sort of remind you of China from back in the Attitude Era?
Yeah, she does. Even to the same haircut, if you look at it closely enough, but different hair color. But yeah, definitely has that sort of ability. And yeah, I mean, could they be setting Jordynne Grace up to have a similar run to the eighth wonder of the world herself?
Well, see, the way I thought about it is, and this might just be the shit stirrer in me, it is that obviously Triple H and China were an item back in the day. I can't imagine that Stephanie McMahon is too happy about Triple H being excited to see a younger, and honestly a more attractive version of China being in their developmental scene.
No, but Hunter does not spend very much time in NXT anymore, or near it, NXT, so it's probably a safe place for that to go down. And we don't need Hunter having a Vince McMahon style scandal.
No, we most certainly do not. But yeah, I mean, despite the fact that this match is well worth a watch, and I do implore you, if you watch any match from NXT,
This one.
watch this 6-woman tag match.
Yeah, I mean, one thing for me, when Jordynne Grace got the tag from Stephanie Baker, she came in and she flattened Fallon Henry with a spine buster, and then literally within seconds was tossing Jasmine Nix around like she was absolutely nothing. And then, she's not just got the strength and she's got speed too and agility. This woman is going to be hard to take down, and she's already been looking at titles. And you can see the way she's looking at the two champions, in the opening build up to this match at the beginning, where she was kind of looking either side, like they've both got titles and I don't. I need a title.
Yeah, Jordynne Grace very much the odd woman out on that tag team, not holding any gold at the moment.
That is definitely not going to stay that way for long, though. I think by Stand and Deliver, if they continue pushing her the way that they've been hinting they're going to, I think Jordynne Grace will have gold by Stand and Deliver.
Oh, 100%. 100%. And Jordynne Grace is the one that ends up picking up the win via pinfall this week, which is always going to be it's sort of the way you would want to go when starting in a new promotion, going over, getting the win, getting over. And I mean, being seen with two of the top women in the division.
I mean, and for her finisher as well, that Juggernaut driver. So she caught Jasmine Nix in midair, who was going for an attempted crossbody. Caught her midair, transitioned her into a Juggernaut driver, which is a spinning sit-out slam, which is already a reasonably complicated move, but did it with absolute ease for the 3 count. While we saw Julia and Stephanie Baker cutting off JC Jane and Fallon Henley's interference attempts. Julia hit a Northern Lights suplex on JC Jane, and Stephanie Baker finished off Fallon Henley with a dragon screw. So Jordynne Grace could pin Nix with a victory, and it was just a beautifully well-timed set of finishes to be able to allow Jordynne Grace to sneak that victory in. It's not even a sneak, to be fair. You knew it was coming from the start. They weren't going to have Jordynne Grace lose on her debut, especially not teamed up with the Women's North American title holder and the NXT Women's title holder.
No, most definitely not. But they've definitely set her up in the best way possible. And before we sort of close out this episode, we've got one last little piece of business to address here, and this was the closing moments of NXT, where we're sort of taken to. I've got to admit, it's not a well-known location. It almost looked like a bunch of a bunch of like
I think it may have been
storage
an
units or
outside car park at the performance center where they probably store a lot of like the equipment used, the ladders, tables, and all that sort of stuff, and it's not hidden under the ring.
yeah, and we see what I can only assume was the mystery four. So this
Sort
these
of
four,
pegging it off into the car park. It was the first time we'd seen them. We hadn't seen them yet tonight. And obviously
No.
with Obafemi calling them out, I thought we might have seen them then instead of, we got Moose. So yeah, to see them kind of what looked like them running off in the opposite direction, knew that something had gone off. Wasn't
Yeah,
expecting
and
it to
we
go
are-
the way it went though, as the camera pans into what you can only put down as like a. It's not like a reception room. It was literally just like a small room with a desk in it, which looked like it had got leaflets and stuff on it, and a chair. And the rather unconscious sort of body of what we both thought could have been Ricky Saints out cold on the floor.
yeah, he was out for the count, only to be found by Ava, trying to basically see. She was left trying to see to Saint, make sure he was okay as the newest hottest signing on the roster. They would have certainly, if it is who we think it is, they've just certainly made a statement for themselves on the back of that, and on the
definitely.
wall behind we see the words that read "No one is safe," and yeah, that means that whatever chaos they're bringing to NXT is only going to get worse from there.
Now, these guys remind me a lot, and I've seen a lot of comparisons in social media, so I do understand this. Very much of an early Shield style thing, like the Hounds of Justice running in, giving an ass kicking, and then pissing off again. So,
Yeah,
could we
but I
have the
don't
Shield
remember the
2.0 on its way?
I don't remember them doing the Shield going quite to this extent, though. That's the only thing, the only proviso I would put in place. I don't remember them doing a lot of it under sort of cover of night. It was very in your face. They were
Oh, we are
seen.
here, and this is what we're doing. Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas, don't get me wrong, they've made some statement appearances, but this latest thing, they've done it. They've only been seen fleeing the scene. so
Yeah,
to
and if you
speak.
think about it, the three people the three times we've seen them, they've taken out the NXT title holder in Obafemi. They've taken out the NXT tag team holders Fraxium, and they've worked Ricky Starks. So they've gone for two title holders and a big name that's come into NXT, looking to make a name
Yeah.
and grab a title. So they're picking off some pretty big names as well. So we'll see
I'm
a
interested.
little bit more of them in the future, I'm hoping.
Yeah, I'm certainly interested to find out what's gone on. And I mean, throughout the night, we were also treated to some mini VTs or some mini promos where we've seen Ricky Saints happening upon like
Random
Instances.
occurrences. There was one
Sort
where
of
he walked
random-
into a room and the entire locker room was just on the floor, reeling after an attack, but you don't see who attacked them or what happened, and he's just looking and going, fucking, this place is nuts.
yeah, and it's a case that I mean NXT is in pure chaos at the moment. And I do not envy Ava as the NXT general manager trying to get a handle on all of that. But we'll have to wait until next week now to
see what
find out how
happens.
this story evolves.
Yeah, and that will be next week's episode. Will be the last NXT episode before we go into Elimination Chamber weekend. So
Yeah.
that's an interesting one. Right, well, Adam, I think I've covered all the notes for this week for myself. Is
Yeah.
there anything else that you want to throw in this week?
No, nothing at all. I've got everything off my chest that I needed to about NXT. I'm just hoping that everybody listening has enjoyed the coverage. We hope to see you again soon on Finishers and Factions does NXT. But the next time you will hear from us will be Finishers and Factions does Friday Night SmackDown, which will be broadcast from New Orleans, Louisiana.
From the Smoothie King Center. So I will see you, Adam, on the next episode of Finishers and Factions of SmackDown.
Yeah, and see you too, buddy.
See you later.
All the best.